Welcome to the session. Topic of this session is National Agricultural Policy. We have achieved spectacular growth in agriculture sector after independence, and the credit goes to green revolution technology and many the policy initiatives taken by the government of India, state governments, and we have achieved a quite good growth in agriculture sector. But there is a large gap in the potential we have in the country and what actually we have achieved, what actually we have realized. So, there is a large gap between the potential in and what actually we are getting in the agriculture field in the country. So, there is still scope to have a lot of improvement in agriculture development process, in the agriculture productivity, in the adoption of agriculture technology, providing the supports to promote the growth of agriculture sector. And also the after the liberalization or globalization of the economies of the world, and to make the agriculture, Indian agriculture more competitive in the international market. And we also observed in the 90s there is a decline, or there is not much growth in agriculture productivity. So, in order to make the agriculture sectors more competitive in the world and to get a substantial or to get a realistic growth in agriculture sector, it was felt there is some and there is a need for some agriculture policy which have the holistic approach and which integrated all the agriculture sectors, subsectors, and which provide all kind of supports in terms of market, in terms of the prices, in terms of the investment opportunity, in terms of the providing the technological advancement, in terms of providing the inputs in timely manner at reasonable prices. There is a need some a holistic kind of policy in agriculture sector. So, actually in 2000 this national agriculture policy were brought by the government of India, which has various components, and to realize actually it was aiming to achieve the 4% growth rate in agriculture sector while maintaining the country's natural resources of the agriculture sectors like land, water, the biodiversity, genetic variability. So, by maintaining all the natural resources and this agriculture policy, national agriculture policies was aims to achieve 4% growth rate in agriculture sector. So, in this session basically we are going to discuss about the national agriculture policy, its various components, and what are the different objectives, what is the need of the what was the need for the national agriculture policy. So, actually the agriculture is a backbone of the Indian economy because it contributes in the national economy, a substantial share is there in the national economy, and the major workforce of the country is employed in the agriculture sectors, and the growth of the other sectors or even the overall economy of the agriculture sector to a great extent depend on the performance of the agriculture sectors. That is why the agriculture is very important. And agriculture is also important to provide the household food security, nutritional security, and the agriculture is also contribute in provide the equity in the income distribution. Actually it help in the poverty reduction in the country. So, because largely the resource poor person, the laborer, they are enrolled in the agriculture activities, so they get some income. So, it help in the reduction of the poverty. So, that is why agriculture is a backbone of the national economy, and basically it is the core of the socio-economic development and progress of the Indian society. So, there are some problems in the agriculture sector also, like we were observing that there is a predominance of the low value agriculture, the crops we are selecting which have the less demand in the market, we are not getting the sufficient prices for agriculture produce, and the low benefit cost ratio in agriculture, the cost or the benefit when we compare, there is a less economic rate of returns in agriculture sector, and there is a inefficient use of the natural resources. And then there is also deterioration in the self-help institution like cooperative organization and farmers organization, because their overall viability reduced due to the more competitiveness from the private sectors or from sometimes public sector company also. And to meet all to face such challenges, we brought different types of policy in the agriculture sector in India. Like we brought the policy related to institutional reforms. In that, land reforms was the major component. Then research and development policy. We brought different types of institutions, sometimes regional institutions for research, for varietal development, for insect pest management, extension or education institution we brought under the research and development policy. And then agriculture price policy, actually which basically measure aim is to provide the price support to the farmers, they provide the reasonable prices to the farmers. Then agriculture trade policy, marketing reforms actually we brought in the to provide the efficient market so that farmers can realize the good prices for their produce. Then credits policy also we brought in the country, actually aims to provide some institutional credit sources to the farmers, so we can save the farmer from the clutches of the money lenders. So credit policy also we brought. But the first time the holistic policy in agriculture sector was brought in 2000, and that is called as that the national agriculture policy. And major objective of this policy was to realize the vast untapped growth potential, because we have the different types of agroclimatic zone, we have different types of soils, we have the resources, natural resources, water resources also there. So we have different very vast untapped growth potentials. And the policy also have objective to strengthen the rural infrastructure. The basically purpose is to support the fast agriculture development and promote the value addition in agriculture sector, and then to accelerate the growth of agro-based industries like agro-processing industries, input industries. Then this policy also have objective to create the employments in rural area by establishing the agro-based industry in the rural areas. And actually aims is to provide a fair standard of living to the farming community, to the agriculture community, to the rural community. And basically this policy also have aims to discourage the migration of rural people to the urban areas, because if there is a job is there in rural area, so why they will move from the rural area to urban area. So this policy aims to discourage the migration. And actually this policy provides sufficient support to face the challenges arising out of the economic liberalization and globalization in the agriculture sector in the country. And there are different salient features of the national agriculture policy, like this policy is targeted to achieve the 4% growth annual growth rate, and in the next 2 decades. And actually the policy emphasizes the greater involvement of the private sectors, and particularly by promoting the contract farming, and the price protection mechanism were developed in this policy. And the emphasis were also given to provide the the insurance schemes by improving the national agriculture insurance schemes. And actually there were many restrictions on the movement of agricultural commodities. So this policy basically aims to dismantle all these restrictions on the movement of agricultural commodity in the country. And actually we have limited water resources, so this policy also talk about the rational use of the water resources for the optimum use of irrigation potential. And high priority is also given in this policy to the development of animal husbandry, the poultry, dairy, aquaculture, or there are different subsectors or subsidiary enterprises related to agriculture. So actually the income of the farmers can be increased through all means. And this policy, the national agriculture policy also have a feature to increase the capital flow in the agriculture sector and provide the assured market for the crop production. And the policy have the exemption from the capital gain if the agricultural land is required for some compulsory purposes for development of road or some development of the dam. So in that condition, the exemption were provided to the farmers from the capital gain. Then this policy also suggested some mechanism for the minimization of the price fluctuations, and this provides this mechanism for the monitoring of the international prices. And this policy also talk about the the protection of the farmers' right on the plant varieties through the legislation, and this policy also talk about the adequate and timely supply of the quality input to the farmers so that we can increase the productivity of the agriculture sectors. And the priority is also given the rural electrifications, and there is a focus, the emphasis is on the setting up the agro processing units in the rural areas and creation of the off-farm employment in the rural areas, so that there is a less migration from rural area to the urban area. And there are various component of national agriculture policy like sustainable agriculture, the food and nutritional security, generation and transfer of the technology, input management, incentive for agriculture, investment in agriculture, institutional structures, risk management, management reform, the employment in agriculture. There are different components. We will be discussing all these components in details now. The first component is the sustainable agriculture, because this policy is aimed to achieve the 4% growth rate in agriculture sectors by maintaining our natural resources like the land, water and genetic endowments. So this policy is basically promotes the use of this natural resources in the technically sound and the economically viable, environmental, non-degrading and socially acceptable manner. So it is basically sustainable agriculture, the concept brought in the national agriculture policy, and ultimate objective is to promote the sustainable development of agriculture by managing these resources in very judicious way by using in the optimal manner. So various suggestions were provided in this national agriculture policy for the sustainable agriculture, like controlling indiscriminate diversion of the agricultural land for non-agricultural purpose, the use of unutilized wasteland for the agriculture and afforestation purpose, and increase the cropping intensity through the multi-cropping and intercropping in the agriculture sector, and develop a long-term sustainable prospective plan for the rain-fed agriculture through watershed approach. So actually this policy gives a lot of importance on the rain-fed agriculture, because it is said that the next green revolution will come from the rain-fed agriculture. So a lot of importance is given the rain-fed agriculture. So this policy talk about the development of the long-term sustainable prospective plan, and this policy also talk about the for the sustainable agriculture is the rational use of the surface and groundwater, because so many areas we have found there is a depleting groundwater. So there should be rational use, selection of the crops should be rational, keeping the availability or recharge of the water in the ground. And this policy also talk about the development of the pasture and forestry programs on the public wasteland by involving the farmers and landless laborer, and also giving the financial incentives and entitlement of trees and pasture to the peoples or community who are participating in the development of pasture and forestry programs. So there are various measures suggested for the sustainable agriculture in the agriculture sector. The next component of the national agriculture policy is the food and nutritional security, and actually it was observed there is a decline in the per capita energy and protein intake during the 90s, and there is a sharp increase in the malnourishment of the farm population. So these are the two major observations were found in the 90s, and it was also found that there is a large accumulation of the stock of the grain, food grain in the government stocks in the government warehouses. So there was a problem of disposal in the domestic international market, and there was a burden on the state exchequer. So we were facing two kind of problem. There is a decline in the per capita consumption of the protein and energy, and the lot of malnutrition were observed. And on the other hand, there was a large stock of food grains available in the godowns. So how to manage these godowns, because it is also costing a lot to the government. So this policy, national agriculture policy, suggests various measures for the food and nutritional security, and one of that the country should adopt regionally differentiated strategy to realize the full growth potential of every region. So the production strategy should be regional based keeping in view the regional resources, soil, water, land, and so this policy have the trust on the development of the rain-fed and irrigated agriculture, and like particularly the floriculture, roots and tuber, plantation crops, aromatic and medicinal plants, the beekeeping, sericulture. And this policy also have the emphasis on the animal husbandry, poultry, dairying and aquaculture practices, and basically policy suggests that we should have the integrated approach, particularly for the marine and inland fisheries, and actually which promote the sustainable aquaculture practices. So actually in all field of the like animals, from the tubers, from the plantation crops, from the poultry, from the fisheries, from all sectors we should provide the desired nutrient to our people, so we achieve the food and nutritional security. Then next component of the national agriculture policy was to generation and transfer of technology, because the technology generation has contributed a lot, and there was a transfer of technology, but we need to improve further in the generation and transfer of technology. So high priority were given in the national agriculture to evolve the location specific and economically viable improved variety of agriculture and horticulture crops, the livestock breeds and the aquaculture, and the emphasis was on the regionalization of the agriculture research based on the identified agroclimatic zones, and there actually there was a huge gap exist between the attainable and attained yield on the farmers field. So the focus was also on the effective dissemination of the already existing improved technology. We should provide this technology to the farmers, and the focus is also on the encouraging the farmers to apply available technology, and like they also this policy also promotes the use of the biotechnology, remote sensing, pre and post harvest management, energy saving and environmental protection technology for the agriculture sector. The next component is the input management, because actually we need to provide the input in timely manners in the adequate quantity to the farmers at the reasonable prices, and the important input in agriculture sector is the seed, fertilizers, pesticides, biopesticides, agriculture machinery, and the credit, and so there was a focus under this policy on the soil testing and the quality testing of the fertilizer and seeds, and there was a mechanism to develop on checking of the supply of the spurious inputs, particularly the seed and fertilizer, and in this policy suggests about the balanced and optimum use of the fertilizer, and also promoting the use of the organic manures and biofertilizer, and also this policy provide a protection to the farmers for the plant varieties which they produced at the farm level. They can sell to the other farmers, they can store, except in case of the some branded varieties. So protection is provided to the farmers. Under this input management component to the national agriculture policy, and the farmers will be allowed for their traditional right to save a huge exchange, share and sell the farm saved seed, except in case of the branded seeds of the protected varieties for commercial purpose. And this policy also talk about the promotion of integrated pest management, and the use of bioagents to minimize the indiscriminate and injudicious use of the chemical pesticide. And this policy talk about the selective and eco-friendly farm mechanization through appropriate technology, that should be promoted, and particularly in the rain-fed farming or rain-fed areas where use of technology is very less. So this policy talk about the selective and eco-friendly use of the farm mechanization in the rain-fed area. And the another component is the incentives for agriculture. Actually this policy provide a favorable economic environment for promoting farm investment through removal of the distortion in the incentives, and also reforms in domestic and external market, and also provide the improved terms of trade for manufacturing sectors with the industrial, with the agriculture sector. So this document, the National Agriculture Policy document, state not only the intention but also elaborate how it should be achieved. So actually the sufficient mechanisms should be developed for providing the incentive. However, there is not much mentions how we will achieve this in the reforms for providing incentive in agriculture sector. And some of the reforms initiative after the National Agriculture Policy was the liberalization of the land lease market, and basically there was a proposal to change regulation to promote the contract farming in private in markets, by developing the private market. And so various reforms were initiated, like the reforms, changes in the Agriculture Produce Market Committee Act, then the change in the Essential Commodity Act, and then development of Price Stabilization Fund for the export oriented commodities, and the formulation of species guidelines for all the agriculture product, and also to promote the competitive trade. So various reforms were initiated after the National Agriculture Policy. And investment in agriculture is another component of the National Agriculture Policy, and purpose of the investment in agriculture is to generate capital in the form of infrastructures and improvement the quality of the natural resources and assets, and creation of the productive assets for promoting long-term growth and improving efficiency in production and marketing. So these are the different objectives of the investment in agriculture. And there are two sources of investment for agriculture sector. One is from the public sector, another is from the private sector. And public sector investment is basically to create the infrastructure like road, electricity, or market, yard. Or the private investment is basically the purpose is for the formation and for the improvement of the quality of the existing assets by the private companies, so they can improve their efficiency. In the investment component of the National Agriculture Policy, high priority were given to the rural electrification. So basically purpose is to improve the electricity supply at a reliable and cost effective manners in the rural areas for agriculture purpose. And also focus was there on the use of new and renewable source of energy, particularly for the irrigation purpose or for other agriculture purpose. And the emphasis was on the setting up of the agro processing units in the producing area, and the particularly crop specific agro based industries. So crop producing area, there was a focus to set up the agro processing units, and the purpose is to reduce the wastage, especially of the horticulture produce. Around 25% of horticulture produce got waste due to non-availability of the post-harvest management practices. And the purpose was to also to increase the value addition in agriculture commodities, and the creation of non-farm employment in rural area were also one of the objective for investment in agriculture sector. And for this purpose, the collaboration between the producer cooperatives and also the corporate sector were promoted to stabilize, to set up the agro processing industry. Then institutional infrastructure is another component of agriculture policy. Basically, three institutional structures or reforms were suggested in the National Agriculture Policy. One is related to land reform, another is related to the private sector participation, third is related to the cooperatives. So, in case of the land reforms, the consolidation of the holding, redistribution of surplus and waste land among the landless, tenancy reforms were brought, and then the development of lease market and recognition of women's rights in the land. These are some of the activities. Then in case of the private sector participation, contract farming were promoted, and the assured market for crops, and then increased flow of the institutional credit, strengthening and revamping of the cooperative credit system. These were the major actions suggested. In case of the cooperatives, reduce or rationalize government control was one of the agenda for promoting the cooperative organizations. So, though there was no concrete measure suggested, and basically the NAP major focus was on the credit delivery through the cooperative organizations. This was the major focus of the National Agriculture Policy on the cooperatives. Then risk management is another important component, because there are different types of risk involved in agriculture sectors, and so basically for managing the risk, the focus was on making this National Agriculture Insurance Scheme more farmers specific and effective, and you basically provide the mechanism for flood proofing or drought proofing, ensuring the remunerative prices through the announcement of minimum support prices on different agricultural commodities, and future trading on agricultural products were also promoted to reduce the price fluctuation. Then management reforms is another important component. So, actually there was a need to have a comprehensive reforms in the management of agricultural by central and state governments, and for the purpose to have the effective implementation of policy, and to develop the regionally differentiated work plan. So, central government, it was proposed that central government will move away from the schematic approach to the macro management mode. They will take the bigger roles. They will not go monitoring each and its schemes. So, basically this role of central government will be the advocacy, and they will basically articulate and facilitate the states in their efforts. And now we can sum up the session that there was a relatively poor growth of agriculture sector during the 19th, and there was a competition from the international market after the liberalization, and the National Agriculture Policy was brought, and basically it aimed to achieve the 4% growth rate in the agriculture sectors, and by maintaining the natural resources. So, basically NAP aims to promote the sustainable agriculture through the proper utilization of the land, water, forest and other natural resources, and there is a need of immediate implementation. It was felt in the practical way for the benefit of the farmers and achieving the 4% growth rate. And it is true that the NAP has to be compatible with the imperative of the economic liberalization and globalization, but safeguarding the interest of the farmers should be the priority of the government. With this, I thank you all.